Thank you so much for your attendance tonight. If you're visiting with us, thank you. Thank you for coming our way. We certainly appreciate it. If you'd fill out one of the blue cards, we'd appreciate that also. And for those that are listening online, we certainly appreciate you being with us. I'm sure that most of you in the audience can go back in your mindset, and you may have got some yesterday. But remember the candy mint named Lifesaver? Oh man, they've been around a while, and there's a story behind the inventor of Lifesavers, and there's also a story around the name itself. It goes back to 1913. Now think about that. Is that amazing? 1913, Clarence Crane was having problems, and he was creating chocolates, and he was having trouble being able to transport them and for them to keep their shape and go without melting, and he had all kinds of issues. And at the same time, he was trying his best to work on a new line of hard candy and hard candy mints. And so, in the process of coming up with some idea of what to do, he found that he needed to turn this over to a peel manufacturer. I never would have guessed it, but that's what he came up with. And so he had this attitude of can do, will do. Can do, will do. Can do, will do. And so all of these issues and all these problems were coming his way, and so he subcontracted out to this company. Strangely enough, their machine, in the process of fulfilling his order, their machine malfunctioned. And the entire batch punched holes in the middle of his candy. And the guy, the president of the peel company, made the trip to deliver the first batch. And he apologized profusely. He said, "I'm so sorry, we will get the next one right." And it is said that Clarence looked at this candy, he tasted one of them, he tasted another, and he said, "You know, I love it." And he said, "It reminds me of a lifesaver." Now, I figured, this is not part of the story, but I figured the guy had some type of a naval background. Perhaps he was in the Coast Guard, perhaps he was in the Navy. Because if you look at a lifesaver and you look what is on those ships, that's kind of what it looked like. Well, he said that he would take the entire lot and to be prepared to make more. And that's where it comes from. All because he was determined to overcome a problem. With his attitude, his disposition, he was willing to look, examine, and go forward. We're told in the Bible, speaking of problems, that man is a few days old and he's full of them. He's full of trouble. He's full of problems. Job told us about that in Job's 14:1. We're also told that man has little control over all of the troubles that he will confront. In fact, Solomon put it this way: time and chance happen to all men. Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 11. However, there is one attribute over which we have total control. That one attribute is our disposition. The little story about the lifesaver told us a lot about Clarence. He had a positive, upbeat attitude, disposition. That is the one thing we can control. We alone control it, whether it's positive or whether it's negative, whether it's God-centered or whether it's worldly-centered. We have the total control over this, whether it is a humble attitude or disposition or whether it's haughty, determined to build up or determined to tear down. All of these are in our own control. We also set our emotional attitude. We can either strive to be better or seek to be excellent. In that seeking, we can seek to influence others to a positive influence with a godly manner or an ungodly manner. To deal with life's challenges in a positive way, or to establish habits and actions of habits of thinking so that we put all things in a greater than self situation. That greater than self, of course, is God. To help us overcome troubles, God gave us three things. Listen to these. Set your mind on things above. Colossians 3:2. Control your thoughts by thinking on the good and the positive. Philippians 4:8. Communicate regularly with God in prayer. And here's one that's very crucial. We communicate with Him in prayer for one reason, for a number of reasons, but for one major reason, because God cares. There's a lot of people in this world that develop the sense that they get all the problems because no one cares. But they forget about one thing. God does care. As I was telling Eliza this week, God knows how many hairs are on her head, she said. Well, you don't have many. And so, that's so true. I told her mine was easy to count. The importance of a positive, godly-based disposition. It is revealed by findings of research in the area of behavioral psychologists. And they came up with this idea that 10% of life's dealings is indeed what happens to you. That's 10%. But 90% is your attitude toward working and overcoming those troubles and those obstacles and those challenges that come your way. God's Word provides a wonderful story, and that's where we're going today. It's actually one of my favorites in 1 Samuel. If you'll go to 1 Samuel chapter 25, we'll see a stark contrast of a wonderful, positive, godly-based attitude of one individual versus a terrible, negative, and ungodly disposition of another individual. If you'll read there with me, 1 Samuel chapter 25, we'll be reading verses 1, 2, and 3. And Samuel died, and all Israel gathered themselves together and lamented him, and buried him in the house of Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. Verse 2. And there was a man in Maon, whose possessions were in Carmel. That's where his business was. And the man was very great, and he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. And he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife was Abigail. And the woman was of good understanding. And the woman was of a good understanding and a beautiful countenance. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. This is a great contrast. We'll go through it a little bit. We're introduced to Abigail. Now notice something. She was described as having a good understanding, a beautiful countenance. The American Standard Version, the King James, both share the same there. But there are other versions that give this, that she was intelligent and beautiful. She was also, as one placed it, a believer in God and had knowledge of His workings. You can underscore that with verse 26, and I would make that reference. And she was approachable by her farm staff. That's evident with verse 14. And so you get a little bit of an idea of this godly woman who had a tremendous attitude, a beautiful disposition. But now you've also heard about her husband. He was churlish. He's described that way. Churlish, the American Standard Version, the King James, both use that terminology. Churlish and evil in all of his doings. The Revised Standard states churlish and ill-behaved. The Living Bible states churlish and uncouth, stubborn and ill-mannered. The NIV says surely and mean. The picture we have of Nabal is pretty obvious. The word churlish, listen to these, means harsh and evil, rude and ill-bred, wicked and mean-spirited. It also means oafish, stupid, foolish, insulting, repugnant, obnoxious, selfish, uncivil, boorish, ill-tempered, unkind, ignorant, and ungracious. Have you ever seen such? Now, as we're going through this, there's got to be something in the back of your mind. We'll get to it in just a moment. The first question maybe, why in the world did this beautiful woman marry such a rude and hateful and evil individual? Well, do you know, we really don't know, but there's three possibilities. Number one, it was an arranged marriage. Nabal was rich, 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats, so it most likely was an arranged marriage. Number two, it could be that her husband died, and she, by law, had to marry his brother. That's possible. We don't know. And number three, it might be that they were married young before the personalities were developed. I don't like that option. That is an option, though. We're told that Nabal was a Calebite of the house of Caleb, or a descendant of Caleb. And that could very well give us some indication, although you have to remember Caleb proved himself. He was a man of faith, he was a man of courage, and if so, notice the contrast between the two. But wait a minute, does that happen in families? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The story is that we're going to look at here in 1 Samuel 25 is that David, his men, they're fleeing from Saul. And on a particular day, verse 8 calls it a feast day. It's a festive time, it's a happy time, it's a time of holiday. David sends his men to convey a greeting of peace to the house of Nabal. And he also requests a contribution. The contribution was specifically for watching over and protecting Nabal's men and their herds in the wilderness. They did so. It was a very reasonable request. You can see that it's backed up in verse 21. But Nabal, in his churlish disposition, he insulted David in front of his own men. Look at verse 10 and verse 11. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, well, who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays that break away, every man from his master. Verse 11, shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers and give it unto men of whom I know not whence they are? Now, real quickly, does this rendition remind you of anything special? My. Well, if you look at Luke 12, it will. Verse 16 through 20, the rich farmer, my barns, and he goes on and on and on. Did you know the rich farmer used that personal pronoun 11 times? Nabal, in this area here, He used it 7. Were they of a similar attitude? They were. They both were centered on self. In essence, David was hearing, this is all Nabal's. Nabal was saying, this is all mine. And you can't have it. And you're not going to get it. And you're not going to get it from me. Did we say that Nabal wasn't too smart? Yeah, he wasn't. That wasn't a smart thing to do. Well, even Nabal could not be so ignorant as to not literally know who David was. Who had heard of the man David that defeated Goliath? Well, who had not heard of the man David that married into the royal family? Who had not heard of David? Who could possibly be so obtuse not to know David? But yet he mocked him. He mocked him. He did not even have enough sense to try to work out something in a diplomatic solution, telling him, hey, David, tell your master that this is going to put me in a real strange position here. Saul's liable to come through. He's going to find out I helped him. He's liable to take it out on me. I can't do this. No. You see, he didn't think that way. He couldn't think that way. And so we find that David, upon hearing the words, well, he didn't handle it real well. His anger came. Look at verse 13. And David said unto his men, gird you on every man his sword. Uh-oh. Yeah, he didn't take it well. In fact, this meant war for him. These were fighting words. And a bunch of people were going to die. And they girded on every man his sword, and David also girded on his sword, and they went up after David, about 400 men, and 200 of bold by the baggage. So you can see that David has a good-sized army here, and he's going to get his pound of flesh. Nabal had repaid evil for the good that David and his men had provided. And as you well know, there was about to be a slaughter. Simply because of Nabal's terrible disposition, his bad attitude, his selfishness, his selfish demeanor, his rudeness, his insulting behavior, he was going to get his whole farm, his whole business wiped out. The story goes on here and tells us that one of the young men heard of the conversation between the men of David and Nabal. And he, of course, was scared to death. But he knew what to do. He knew exactly what to do. He ran to get Abigail. And he said, Abigail, we've got a problem. She was approachable, obviously. But he told her all that had transpired. Now, for a moment here, you have to put yourself in Abigail's shoes. How do you handle this? And he also told her how David railed at David's men and mocked him. Verse 14 clears that up for us. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed at them. And he told her that David's men were very good to them, and that they had protected them when they were in the wilderness. All of that was true. And also the other thing, they did not take a single thing. Abigail was understanding. Wait a minute. Where would you be now? What would you be doing? Abigail was understanding. And she also agreed with him as to Nabal being a worthless fellow. That's verse 17. And also not approachable. Did you know that verse 17, now therefore, know and consider what thou wilt do, for evil is determined against our master and against all of his house, for he is such a worthless fellow, one that cannot speak to him. There are other versions here that read in the New King James, he's a scoundrel. In the King James Version, it uses a very strong term. He is a son of Belial. That's to say, he is the son of the devil. The RSV reads that he's ill-natured. He's stubborn. One reads he's a stubborn lout, unreasonable and stupid. But notice some things Abigail did. She was very quick to take charge. She knew that it would do no good to go to Nabal and try to talk to him, so she didn't even go that route. But there are 8 leadership actions that Abigail did to deal with this trouble. 8. It could also help us maybe. Number 1, Abigail was decisive, verses 18, 19, and 20. She made haste to have the food prepared. Let's get on the stick. Let's get it done. Abigail, number 2, was humble before David, verse 23. She knew she had better do something quick or everybody was going to die. She fell on her face before David, verse 23. She pleaded for the lives of all of those who belonged to Nabal. Number 3, Abigail made the effort to atone for Nabal. Verse 24, she said, put this iniquity on me. Just put it on me. I did not watch my husband close enough. That's basically what she's saying. Number 4, Abigail acknowledged the truth of the entire situation. Verse 25. She admitted that her husband was a fool, but that she had no knowledge of his actions before David's men. But once she was told, she went about to rectify the situation as quickly as possible and bring the food. Number 5, Abigail brought God into the conversation. Verse 26. She kept David from killing a large number of innocent people in an irrational rage of anger. And by doing so, do you know what she did? She got David's attention. Oh, David realized what kind of mistake he could have made if he had wiped out all of those people. Number 6, Abigail exalted David by wishing the foolishness of Nabal on all of the enemies of David. Verse 26. Isn't that something? Now that was a pretty sharp mentioning there. And number 7, Abigail asked for forgiveness. Verse 28. And then number 8, Abigail was wise enough to ask David to remember her when Jehovah God had made him ruler. And she even inserted the terminology there, his ruler, God's ruler. Verse 31. Now, I don't know how many of you would have done the same things she did, but I think more of you would have done so than you think. David responded. And after all, why wouldn't he? David acknowledged Abigail's truth. Verse 32, he was blessed by her discretion. Number 2, David credits God's providence for sending Abigail and the wisdom that she kept him in helping him to not kill so many other innocent people. Verse 33. Number 3, David accepted her gifts. That's all he really asked for. And he asked nicely. And after all, it was a contribution. He had done the work. Number 4, David obeyed Abigail's voice, her words. And you know something else? He showed her great respect, verse 35, which in that time frame was pretty much unheard of. And number 5, David allowed Abigail to go home in peace, verse 35. Now, you have to ask the question, why in the world would she want to go home? But she did. I think that tells you a lot about her character. She wanted to go home. And she wanted to tell Nabal what she had done. Verses 36, 37. She was honest. She wanted to lay it all out before him. She had wisdom in that she waited till the next morning when he would be sober. Hey, that takes a lot of wisdom. Oh, she's probably been through this before. She knew when it was time to talk and when it was time not to. Abigail was honest. She was direct. And Nabal, well, for a moment, put yourself in Nabal's shoes with that churlish manner. He wasn't a happy camper. He wasn't appreciative. He didn't appreciate her honesty. He didn't appreciate what she did. He had gotten drunk. He was ready to die. So be it. But his anger brought on, as some people would say, most likely brought on a stroke. And 10 days later, he died. Some commentaries say he died because the stroke brought on a heart attack. We don't know, but we do know he died. 10 days later, verse 37, he became as of a stone, is the terminology there. David, hearing of Nabal's death. Now think about this one for a moment. How exactly did he hear of Nabal's death? Do you think that perhaps, maybe, he kept an ear to the ground to hear what might be transpiring? Do you think Abigail had a hold on him, maybe? Got his attention. But hearing of Nabal's death, he credited God with the vengeance that he sought, verse 39. So he was thankful. He was very thankful. And then David had one other thing he wanted to do. He then sent for Abigail, verse 39. And do you think she turned him down? No. She accepted, verse 41, 42. She accepted. Remember, she's the one that put the bug in his ear. Don't you forget about me. Please don't forget about me. What a wonderful example we have of a positive, godly-based disposition in this lady named Abigail. I've got 8 things here that we can learn from her address, that we can learn on how to address issues, challenges, problems that come our way. Number 1, always maintain a positive, godly-based disposition. The hiring that I have done through my lifetime was hired based upon a couple of things. Number 1 was eye contact, and the other was the attitude that was perceived in the conversation. I used one other also, and that was their ability to handshake. That was a big deal. It is still a big deal. And there's been many a person that didn't get hired because they couldn't shake hands. Number 2, identify and understand the issue. You've got to identify that issue. You've got to then understand that issue. Number 3, bring God into the discussion. You better pray, and you better pray consistently on getting the wisdom and the need of getting this thing taken care of. Number 4, be humble. Be humble. Accept the blame, if indeed the blame belongs to you. But I even put here, whether you deserve the blame or not, you've got to get it taken care of. Number 5, be determined to rectify the situation. Be determined to get this thing taken care of. Number 6, quickly, take charge, develop a plan, and that plan is developed for the purpose of correcting the issue. And then number 7, of course, be decisive in working that plan. Oh, you may have to modify it as it goes along. That's possible. That's part of it. And then number 8, correct the bad habits that created the trouble and the issue. I hope this has been helpful. 1 Samuel, this story is unbelievable. I think we touched just about everything, but I would recommend reading through it and looking at these two people and the contrast that God has given us. And I sure hope it's been good and worthy for you. Thank you.
36. We're going to sing all 3 verses of this song. Here we are, but straying pilgrims, here our path is often dim, but to cheer us on our journey, still we sing this wayside hymn. Yonder over the rolling river, where the shining mansions rise, soon will be our home forever, and the smile of the blessed giver gladdens all our longing eyes. Here our feet are often weary on the hills that throng our way. Here the tempest darkly gathers, but our hearts within us say, yonder over the rolling river, where the shining mansions rise, soon will be